Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Moving Behavioral Research Online, the Next 6 Months. I'm Joe Ridholm, editor of Quirk's Marketing Research Review. Our host today is Jonathan Asher, Executive Vice President at EyeSee. Jonathan, take it away.
Good morning, and thanks to Quirks for providing this platform for sharing insights and ideas. Thanks to our client colleagues who are providing their thoughts and experience, and thanks to all of you who are in attendance. So, where are we today? Obviously, these past few weeks have been filled with unprecedented change in the way we live and work, the products and services we use, and how we shop. And while there have recently been some encouraging signs from the health community, the future still remains uncertain in terms of how long things will continue as they are, and when and how we'll get back to normal, and what normal will actually look like. Of course, most of us are in the insights business, and so we realize that the best way to reduce uncertainty is with knowledge, and that knowledge is obtained by doing research. So we'd like to share with you results from several studies we've conducted recently. The first group of tracker studies where we gauge what people are doing, how they're thinking and feeling. We've done that in both the US and in Europe so that we have that perspective and comparison. In addition, we've done replication studies where we repeated studies that were conducted prior to the crisis, some 6 months or a year ago, to see if the results we get today with the current situation holds up, which would give us confidence in conducting research now. We've done that for shopper studies, e-commerce, and social media advertising. What we're seeing generally in terms of current attitudes is that people are feeling uncertain, which in a way is a positive, that only a quarter of the people across the US, France, and Germany are feeling pessimistic or negative, with 3/4 being either unsure of where things are going, or some of them actually feeling positive about where things are heading. Moving into our next session, slightly different shift, we want to talk about media and ad testing, and a combination of the replication studies we've done to see how well are things holding up if we do the testing now, but also have the benefit of our experts. So Prab, you've done a lot of ad testing. Building on the ad replication study, what are some of your key learnings and best practices, having looked at those doing animatics and ad testing?
Yeah, no, sure, Ranjan. Just thinking about last evening when I was watching a show, I can recall the number of ads what I was exposed to. But today, probably we are consuming media probably more than what we were a month back by being forced to stay at home and us taking on more screen time. So ads, irrespective of where the economy is, still part of our daily lives. We have had some learnings from the 2008 recession that humorous ads consistently were top performers during pre, peak, and post-recession periods, while promotional and value-focused ads consistently struggle. And ads that tell a story and ads with sentimental themes got a boost during the height of the recession. I'm not trying to compare what we're going through today to 2008, but the takeaway is advertising matters during tough economic conditions. And I'm sure there are lots of research partners doing a lot of work out there to try to understand consumer sentiments in a better way to see what message would be more appropriate for certain brands based on the current situations. Looking at a couple of best practices, from my viewpoint, anywhere we can implement the behavioral components, it adds value. Just simple examples, right? Let's say you're doing a couple of animatic testing, rather than asking a question of purchase intent and comparing how the top 2 box or the top box numbers come out, add that behavioral component of a purchase exercise rather than a purchase intent question. So what I mean by that is use a virtual interactive shelf, have respondents shop through it, the output, what you get out of that is much richer than just a top-to-box score. It helps you identify if you're cannibalizing your other brands, assuming a scenario you operate in a category where you own more than one brand. And it also helps to understand where that incremental source of volume could come from. Adding that behavioral component, I think it's a better way to identify the purchase influence potential of the animatic or the ad. And also using facial coding to the animatic testing. It helps the creative agencies big time to understand where the emotion peaks, drops down, and if it is peaking and dropping down at the right moments of the ad. Just based on the survey questions, I feel it is tough to understand those type of inputs. We can obviously understand the appeal of the ad, why it is appealing, why it is not, but the behavioral observation through the facial coding delivers those rich learnings that survey questions can't. To conclude, I would say the behavioral components like virtual shopping or facial coding, it complements traditional survey questions. And by combining that implicit and explicit learnings together, what we get out of the research is just that much more actionable.
And Prab, in your experience, those key approaches of making it as realistic and having context and shopping and facial coding and eye tracking, all of those you have found are available on a remote basis, and you find you can rely on those. Is that correct?
Yeah, very much, very much. It is easier with the technological advances, and to take you guys as an example, those tools are very much accessible. All you need to do is try it and figure out where it fits in your research toolkit and when and how to use it. So it's very much possible, and it is efficient way to conduct research, especially on a global scale.
Great. And so that leads into, Mirna, can you discuss the results of our social media ad testing, where we replicated what was done before?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I'm glad you asked about that. So yes, we recently ran an advertising replication study to see how the results during the crisis hold up and if they're comparable to the results from 10 months ago. Basically, we wanted to make sure that the results are reliable enough and that our clients can safely continue testing given the change in circumstances. In a nutshell, the data is still valid and stable in both second and the third wave of the study. So what did we do? We tested 18 ads in total, which means 3 ads from each of the 6 industries on a large social media platform with over 900 respondents. In the second wave of the study, we had a full exact replication of the study environment. And in the third, we placed those same ads in a COVID-19 aware context of the social media feed. So the ads are the same, the context is a little bit different. In terms of results, the results show that the data is very stable across all industries and most KPIs. The winning ads and their relative positions are unchanged. In the second study, key performance indicators such as visibility, attention, emotional reach, likability remain comparable with the first wave of the study. The only significant increase in KPIs we observed was ad recall, as you can see here. Ads from all the industries has an average uplift per ad of 8.5 percentage points, from 25.6 to 35%. We hypothesize that this is due to the respondents being in a more alert state than usual, so they notice stuff around them even more, or they're spending more time on social media during social distancing. The results from the third wave agreed actually with both these presumptions. Ad recall was the same in the COVID-19 feed as well, meaning it was significantly higher than the first study. We also saw that having COVID-19 content in the feed did not influence other results significantly. Additionally, we looked at the time respondents spent on browsing their feeds. So it was the overall time spent on the feeds was somewhat higher in the second wave, but it was significantly higher in the third wave of the study, which again proves that this is one of the effects of the current context in comparison to last year. Overall, the stability of the results tells us that we can rely on both explicit and implicit data even during these turbulent weeks to pick out winning ads. The ads that are engaging and manage to break through the clutter to capture the attention of the respondents do so, regardless of the differences in the consumer sentiment or the current context. So if we want to speak about how to set up ad testing during upcoming months, I believe the usual advice is still applicable. Brands should make sure to test ads both in context to measure their performance and breakthrough ability, and also take a deep dive on second-by-second basis in order to optimize every aspect of the ad. That's the first thing I'll suggest to anyone, regardless of the crisis. Respondents nowadays are very attentive and open to messages from their brands, but it's essential to be sensitive and informative and work on building brand equity. This is the right time to communicate that you are there, that your product is in stock, and what are you doing to help?
Okay, thanks.
So to provide just a broad overview of what we covered today, which was quite a bit of good information from everybody's experiences, I guess it comes down to what I consider three broad areas and things to think about. The first is it makes sense to continue doing research at this time. Now, obviously, that varies some with what the situation is that your company is experiencing, and it may vary on what topics you do research. But for most marketers who are anticipating re-engaging with shoppers in the coming months, now is the time to formulate plans for what that re-engagement would look like so you can hit the ground running when the time is right. And part of that planning is to understand how shoppers are thinking, feeling, and behaving, and how they might respond to something new that you're planning to introduce in the market. And we've seen that the research does hold up, and there are ways to include questions about what their sentiment is at the moment, and we can split the data accordingly. But in addition, we want to be flexible because the current conditions are different, and some of the traditional approaches that we might have been comfortable using or been very accustomed to for many years simply may not be viable right now, or they may not work as well. So the idea of being open, we heard a couple of the panelists talk about it, be open to newer ways of doing things, either that you've used a little bit but not fully embraced or had never used. Now could be a good time to understand those more fully and frankly take a chance. Vet them carefully because you want to make sure you know what you're getting, because sometimes something looks like it's providing a outcome, but it may not. So fully understand it, but be open to new possibilities for these new conditions. And then finally, make sure you're also learning about these new behaviors. We know that people are doing things differently, how they're shopping, what kinds of products they're buying, how they're using products. Let's make sure that we're not leaving those opportunities ignored. Just as simple as e-commerce, much more shopping online for CPG products than was ever the case. Now, it may not be exactly perfect. People are finding a lot of out of stock or long delivery times, so it may not be fully representative. But since people are doing it, it's a good opportunity for you to understand how are they doing it? What are the challenges? How can we better address their needs? So those are the things I think we're all sort of coming away with, that it makes sense to keep doing research, think about how you might do it differently, and also what are some other things to be testing that you might not have thought of otherwise. And I'll just see if our speakers have any quick one thing to take away. We had talked about that as a possibility. I think we still have time for that. Prab?
Yeah, I can jump in really quick. To me personally, online behavioral research, it creates efficiencies in executing research, especially on a global scale. And as I mentioned earlier, anytime you combine implicit and explicit techniques, the learnings are just rich. You have to try it if you haven't to see where it fits in your research toolkit.
Great, thanks. Shruti, is there one thing you want people to take away from today's session?
Yeah, I would say we're all natural, again, consumer marketers, and I would say put on that detective hat now more so than ever, be alert, and don't be afraid to go back and revisit how you typically approach learning and think through it in more of a disruptive manner as we're all heading into a largely virtual environment.
Great, thank you. Liubov, one big takeaway?
Yes. So I think that this was a super great very inspiring session. And I think that we are living at the time of uncertainty, that many things are not clear, but this is exactly what creates a good environment for change and for great innovation.
Okay, thank you everyone for your great insight on these topics. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. If you have additional thoughts or questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can use the email on the slide here. And also stay tuned for our next webinar on e-commerce, which is coming up on May 5th. We think you'll enjoy that information that we share as well and look forward to seeing you then.